Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 17 of season 2 of Arrow called Birds of Prey. And this is of course the episode with Huntress coming back, where we get to see and her of course first meeting with Black Canary, and basically setting the stage for a more proper version of the Birds of Prey sometime in season 3. In fact, the guys behind the scenes, like Mark Guggenheim, have even flat out said, yeah, we want to do something more along the lines of a proper Birds of Prey in season 3. And of course, he also said, well, we couldn't come out of the gate with these characters as the Birds of Prey. We don't have obviously Felicity is going to be taking the place of Oracle. Let's just resign ourselves to the fact that we are not going to see Barbara Gordon on this show, okay? And of course, this is the first place where Canary and Huntress meet, and they don't get along terribly well, just as they've often both worked together and butted heads in the comics. But anyway, we'll talk more about all of this a little bit later on. One thing I do want to talk a little bit more about that, since I've been reading about what's going on with the show and the reactions to last week's episode. Mark Guggenheim, one of the main producers, said in regards to the whole Harley Quinn thing from last time around that was basically just intended as an Easter egg for the fans. So I guess that just means that it seems at this point rather unlikely that we'll see a full and proper Harley Quinn in season 3. On the other hand, it would be pretty silly to think that the folks who make the show have not noticed just how excited fans got over this possibility. So you never know. The behind the scenes folks might change their mind, or they might adjust things a little bit. Who knows what they're going to do on season 3? But I bet we would see more of Hive, things like that. Obviously, plenty more stuff with the League of Assassins. Oh man, there's just so many possibilities. Jeez, so much possibilities. God, I'm an English teacher. Okay, well, let's just kind of move on and start talking about the little things and then build up. Not a whole lot to say about what's going on with Dig this episode. It was a little bit of a shame. I thought for a minute there we might get to see him strap on the Arrow costume one more time, just to help Oliver out there. I thought that would be kind of cool, since we only did ever get to see that once. That wasn't meant to be. But give Dig a lot of credit. He doesn't have very many lines this episode, but he conveys so very much for just some of the looks he gives the other folks in the Arrow Cave. And again, Felicity is just sort of stuck on support this time around. But that's fitting, because that's sort of what she would do as Oracle, for lack of a better term, in a proper version of the Birds of Prey. I mean, it's been established time and time again, Felicity is really, really not cut out for field work. At least not without a lot more training from Sarah and Oliver and Dig. So, yeah, there is that. But Felicity definitely did get in some really, really nice digs at Oliver, and it's very clear that she is no fan of Helena Bertinelli's. And, of course, this is quite justified, but we'll talk about that, Helena as a character, a little bit later on. So, yeah. One thing I do want to say, though, is I was actually reading some of the Green Arrow comics just the other day, and it was one of the collections, and they introduced, there's some stuff in it that really seemed heavily influenced by the show, including an appearance by Diggle. Diggle, if you didn't know, has been incorporated into the comics proper. The volume I read, it was volume 4, called Kill Machine, of the newer Green Arrows. It actually ends on the cliffhanger of Dig's appearance in the comics for the first time. There's also a character called Komodo, who seems to have taken a few pages out of Malcolm Merlin's book. Shadow appears, very different than how she is on Arrow, but it is Shadow. And there's a character called Naomi Singh, who definitely seems to have been taken a few pages out of Felicity's book. So I really love this whole interplay and interchange between the shows and the comics, because that's, for example, what brought Lionel Luthor from Smallville into the DC universe, and they also incorporated Chloe Sullivan eventually. Can't really recall exactly too much about her in the DC universe proper, but anyway, like I said, I really love that sort of interchange. Let me see here. Not a huge amount to say about what's going on with Thea. Just Roy's strategy for getting to break up with her. That's a little cliche, but you can't deny that it works. And I like that, even though the way Oliver explains it to him, it's like, dude, you cannot control yourself. And while granted Thea is the thing that sort of brings you back down to earth, you don't know that you're not going to one day just lose it and you might accidentally hurt Thea because you can't control yourself. We'll talk about Roy a bit more in a second. So, of course, this episode we get to see Thea after Roy, she catches Roy making out with that chick, all heartbroken and all like, Oliver, you're the one person I can trust, and you're the one person who never lies to me. And of course, this is just a knife in the gut to Oliver. This is, I think, one of those ways where they're very subtly highlighting that Oliver and his mom are really not so different. They're both lying to Thea to protect her. They're both manipulating her life in order to protect her, and it's all for her own good. At least that's how they think. But you don't manipulate and lie to people you love. It never ends well. And, I mean, just after that whole "you're the only one that doesn't lie to me" speech, you know that Thea has to find out what's going on. At least with Malcolm Merlyn, probably with Oliver being the vigilante as well, because it's pretty safe to say, the way they've been sort of poking fun at how many people know Oliver's secret, that probably more people are going to find out. I've already said I'm convinced that Quentin Lance is going to find out if he hasn't already put it together. And under the circumstances, Thea also finding out also just makes perfect sense. Now there's the whole thing of her now having been kidnapped by Slade, because what else is Slade going to do there? And also, what can I say? I watched the preview at the end of the episode. So obviously Oliver is just going to this is like, okay, let's cry havoc and let's slip the dogs of war. You do not screw with Oliver Queen's sister. And of course, you can't have Moira not find out about this. And you definitely can't have Malcolm Merlyn not find out about this. Because it just opens the door for, one, possibly Oliver and Malcolm having to team up, which we've already talked about. Or two, Slade versus Malcolm. It's like, who in the world does Oliver root for in that one? Actually, knowing Oliver, he would probably hope that they just kill each other, because that would really solve a lot of his problems. But yeah, this just opens the door for so much cool stuff, and there's no way they can't go down those roads in some fashion. Because I guarantee you, and keep it in mind, just think about what happens. Oliver does not know that Malcolm Merlyn is still alive. So there's that whole thing of, oh God, Malcolm Merlyn is still alive. And, well, you got to think, Malcolm Merlyn probably not too happy with Oliver over the death of his son. And just imagine the scene of Oliver telling Merlyn what happened, Tommy's last words, that absolutely phenomenal scene at the end of last season. That's just gold. Absolute gold. One thing I saw that people saying a lot on Twitter last night, and incidentally, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I decided to just take a chance and actually live tweet my views of my opinions on the show as it was airing. Coincidentally, that was also the time that most of the cast of Arrow was also doing the same thing, so my impulsive decision was rather poorly timed. But I do know at least a few of my viewers did join me for that, and yeah, guys, that was a lot of fun. I'll talk some more about that later, but let's get back to Thea. A lot of people on Twitter were saying that you're really dumb to have gotten in that car with Slade, and yeah, that may not have been the smartest decision, but let's keep in mind, Slade is someone who has been introduced to her by her mother as someone that her mom has basically given a big fat seal of approval to. And, Slade is raising a good point that, hey, you really shouldn't be wandering around the glades late at night, considering that Thea has been attacked here before. Yeah, okay, yeah, she doesn't know Slade very well, but again, this is a guy that her mom has given her own personal seal of approval to. She has met the man before. He proved to be nothing but nice and polite to her. Under the circumstances, accepting a ride from Slade is probably actually, under normal circumstances, would actually be the less risky option. Now, granted, you have to wonder, where in the world do the people that go to Verdant park? I mean, is there a subway stop nearby? Was Thea going to the parking garage, or did she just keep walking because she was so emotionally upset? Of course, at the end of the day, these are little logistical questions that ultimately have no real impact on the plot, so don't obsess over them too much. Don't sweat the details, folks. So yeah, I'm not really in the camp that says that Thea should catch a whole lot of flack for what she did there. It was not, under the circumstances, that terrible of a decision. Anyway, since we mentioned him briefly before, let's pop back over to talking about Roy. Again, we're seeing that in Roy you see a little bit of what Helena was talking about, like once you let the darkness in. Well, Roy's a guy who's made some big mistakes in his life, and he's been trying to correct those. But now with the Mirakuru and this rage that he can't control, he's letting that darkness in, and he's also not listening to Oliver when Oliver's the best person out there to really help him with all this. I kind of have a feeling that if Oliver were to okay, let's go down to the empty warehouse, and I'm going to kick your butt all around this room for a little while just to show you that powers or not, I can still whip your ass, then that might work in getting through to Roy. But Oliver is trying to shy away from that sort of thing. That's a little too League of Assassins for his taste, most likely. Now, Sarah, she would probably be pretty down for teaching Roy that way, but she and Roy don't really have that strong of a bond, so I can see why that they would leave that to Oliver. Anyway. It was kind of cool that Oliver used the name Speedy. Now, of course, remember, Speedy is Thea's old nickname from when she was a kid, and I like how he very cleverly did that as a way to bring Roy back down to earth. Now, Mark Guggenheim, who I keep mentioning, when he talks about Roy in the interviews, he tends to refer to him as Arsenal. Arsenal was Roy's second superhero code name. It went from Speedy to Arsenal to Red Arrow, which is what he goes by nowadays. So I could kind of see them, having him take up the name Arsenal and maybe at some point transition into Red Arrow down the road. Other people have said, they think Thea's going to be the one to die, and Roy takes up her old nickname as a way to honor her, kind of like what happened when Tommy died. I still think that Speedy is just going to remain a nickname. Fans, I think, would be accepting of a nickname like a code name or a nickname like Arsenal. But I don't think they'd be very down with Felicity going like, Speedy, you need to go and rescue Oliver. No, they're not. No, that's not gonna fly. And I think that kind of covers everything I had to say about Roy. Yeah, you know what? Before we go on, let's talk about the island. Not a huge amount to say about what's going on there. But here we do get to see Sarah make the choice to knock out Kaczynski, or whatever the hell that dude's name was, and trade him to Slade in exchange for Oliver. And this is us. I like that it takes the focus off Oliver and puts it on Sarah and Slade, particularly Sarah, because this is her making one of those big moral compromises that's really going to be the hallmark of her life for the next 4 years, because of everything that she's going to have to do in order to survive in the League of Assassins. And I have a feeling that Slade specifically mentioning about Roman torture methods was, of course, a reference to Manu Bennett's time on Spartacus, where he played Crixus. I've not really seen very much of that show, but one of my friends is a huge Spartacus fan. Had nothing but good things to say about Manu Bennett as Crixus, And I've got nothing to say, good things to say about Manu Bennett here as Slade Wilson on Arrow. So, hats off to this guy. He really is a fine, fine actor, and the show is very lucky to have him. Of course, so now, just from the electric torture, we now know the origin of one of Oliver's scars and how he got Shadow's tattoo on the back of his shoulder. And, this being a ship full of sailors and mercenaries, it's not too unreasonable to think that one of those guys on there knows how to do tattoos. See? Something that wasn't explained in the show, but if you think about it for 5 seconds, you can figure it out. I mean, if I can rant here for a second, people who need every little thing explained to them and spoon-fed to them absolutely drive me crazy. Especially when we're talking on, like, TV shows and geek stuff like this. It's like, use your brain. Now, as a teacher, of course, I have to show patience with my students. It's like, okay, sometimes if somebody's struggling with it, you just have to go over it step by step, lead them through it, because, that's what you have to do. But with stuff like this, you're generally dealing with people who are old enough to logic and reason for themselves, that they don't need every little thing explained to them. And you don't want every little thing explained to you in fiction, because otherwise it tends to fill things up with ultimately trivial details. But anyway, okay, rant over. Back on to talking about, masked vigilantes beating the snot out of each other, because that's fun. And I guess this would mean be a good time to bring up, well, yeah, actually let's go on to Sarah and talk about her, since we were just mentioning her. And one, I like that Sarah's whole reaction to Huntress being Oliver's ex-girlfriend is that she's just sort of amused by all this. Please note the word amused in this situation is correct. Bemused and amused are not the same thing. Bemused actually means confused. It's just an older term for an older synonym for confused. I see a lot of people these days make that mistake, but it's wrong. Again, I'm an English teacher. So anyway, so she's just sort of amused by all this. Of course, Felicity's poking fun at Oliver, and I love that line where Felicity goes, "Yeah, my advice to you is if you run into Helena Huntress is to kick her ass." But the really nice thing about that whole scene is that Sarah is really in no position to throw stones on the "my ex-girlfriend is a multiple murderer" situation, because hey, Nyssa Algol, multiple murderer for sure. So, and I gotta say, the whole fight between Huntress and Black Canary, great stuff. I love that part where, like, Canary just goes out the window and she uses that cloth thing to sort of break her fall. It sort of reminds me of some of the things you see people do in those wushu movies from China. Now, obviously, nothing super fancy, a little bit more nitty-gritty on that one, but still, that was cool. And of course, then there's round 2, where it makes it abundantly clear that Helena, she's pretty good, but Sarah is way better. And if you actually read the comics that flesh out the Arrow universe, you find out that Helena received a lot of her training from various, like, mob hitmen. Yeah. Okay, she's basically like, she fights like Helena fights like a mob assassin. Sarah got her training from the League of Assassins. Okay, so this time around, well, no surprise, League of Assassins wins. But I like how there's this whole thing of, you don't have to kill her. And this is another little step of Sarah sort of taking a step down Oliver's path. Sarah, of course, is perfectly capable of killing Helena if she wanted to. And, of course, trying to play with Kate goes the first time around doesn't go so well. So when she gets the upper hand on Helena, it's not surprising that she's thinking, go for the kill. But again, Sarah makes the proper moral choice that Helena just couldn't. The decision to show mercy. And anyway, let's go and talk about Helena then. And I love how she says that line. I see Oliver really still likes to dress up his girls, or something along those lines. And you do have to admit that this is a little bit of a point there. That's 2 girls with masks and such that Oliver has had a thing going on with. On the other hand, if you also do the math, you could also say that he has a thing for girls whose last name is Lance. Wow, McKenna Hall is really just the odd man out all over the place. Oh, wait, no. Oliver banged Isabel, but... Well, okay, Oliver and Isabel just kind of had a hookup. I wouldn't really call that any sort of real relationship. Yeah, I'll count Helena as a real relationship, just as a very short-lived and ultimately disastrous one. Speaking of which, man, how long has it been since we've seen Isabel, huh? Oh god, I didn't even know these things existed until I went to CVS yesterday. Oh, yes. So much coffee, wonderful. Anyway, so here we see that Helena comes back and she's basically like the last person when we last saw her. In fact, she might even be worse because she's taking hostages now. Now, before, last time around, part of what really set her off clearly down the road of a villain was her murdering those, what was it, not federal agents, but, oh, darn, U.S. Marshals, yeah, U.S. Marshals, who were protecting her dad. And here, she apparently kills at least 2 more of those guys and takes a bunch of innocent people hostage. And it's made pretty clear that Helena wasn't kidding, that she really was going to execute a hostage if the heroes hadn't intervened. And I like how she and Laurel, and remember, Helena and Laurel had met before. They had an extraordinarily awkward dinner together with Tommy and Oliver. Tries to talk to her about loss and all this other stuff. And Helena, I just love it how she just throws it in her face and goes, "Aw, are we girlfriends now?" Give it to Jessica DeGao. She really does that bad guy shtick of Huntress well. And I like that they're even willing to really put Huntress full on as a bad guy. In the comics, she's somebody who's always sort of danced the line between hero and anti-hero, but she's never been really portrayed properly as a villain. Here, Huntress is guilty of murdering something like 5 cops. At least. Not to mention, accidentally shooting Oliver's mom and just killing other people related to her dad's mob business. Now, the mob guys, you can argue the case that they deserved it, but still, it's hard to put anybody in the hero category or even anti-hero category for murdering cops who are just doing their jobs. But of course, this episode, Helena still, even though her father dies, she doesn't get what she wants because she wanted to be the one that killed him. And then with that scene with Oliver at the end where she says, "You were right. Killing my father hasn't brought me any closure. I still am as empty and miserable as I was before." And if nothing else, you can see that Helena has at least gained a little bit of wisdom out of everything that's happened. And of course, she's now in a prime situation to be shanghaied by Amanda Waller into Suicide Squad now that Shrapnel is dead. And I can't imagine that that is not what is going to happen. I mean, just think about it, Black Canary, Oliver, Roy, Dig, Suicide Squad, Huntress, all of them, probably even including Malcolm Merlyn, all having to rally together to take down Slade. It's insane and I love it. I mean, this sort of stuff is why comic books are awesome. And let's see. That kind of covers everything I had to say about them. Actually, there's really not a huge amount to say about Oliver this episode. Just that real scene with Thea and Oliver feeling like an enormous dick for lying to her and messing with her life. And of course, there's still, Oliver still, they question Oliver still thinks he can save Huntress and all this, but I think Oliver just really kind of wanted to go in there and sort of see, really whether or not there was maybe something from Helena that could still be salvaged. And I think that maybe I think Suicide Squad is just like what Huntress needs, because look at the way Deadshot has changed in his time in Suicide Squad. He seems to have really focused in on trying to be at least an honorable, having at least adhering to a genuine code of honor. But anyway, so let's talk about Laurel real quick. Okay, Laurel. Her saying that whole once you let the darkness in, it's a little hard to let it out. It sort of seems like maybe they're trying to take Laurel in a more morally ambiguous direction. Now, I like that this whole her getting her job back just like that turned out to be some BS that Adam Donner was pulling, because I was like, no way does this work. But anyway, the thing about Laurel this episode is, one, when Sarah saves her, and I'm not going to rag on her for not realizing that's her sister, because this is comics. All you need to conceal your identity completely from your loved ones is a domino mask. I mean, that's just how this sort of thing works. No, what bugs me here this time around is, one, she does not seem to understand the value of Sarah getting her out of that building. If Sarah gets her out of there, that is one less hostage that Huntress has. And apparently Laurel has forgotten her self-defense training from when she beat up that bouncer in Season 1, because she's a complete chump at combat this time around. Laurel in that building is nothing but a liability. And she's not even really the least bit helpful when Sarah tries to save the other hostages. And then, of course, there's that whole scene where Laurel starts to go and reaches over and tries to grab a bottle of booze in the middle of everything that's going on. Like, Laurel, I understand that being taken hostage by a crazy woman is probably very stressful, but do you really want something that's going to impair your ability to run in this situation? Because if so, you might as well just stab yourself in the foot. And then there's the whole thing at the end where she blackmails Kate Spencer, the district attorney, into getting her job back. Okay, first of all, cool to see Kate Spencer again. Because in the comics, Kate Spencer is Manhunter. But, Laurel, do you really think that a district attorney is just going to sit back there and go like, oh, darn, you got me with that blackmail? Yeah, anyway, so, hey, welcome back to the office. Would you like a donut? Seriously, how in the name of all that is holy is Kate Spencer not going to be looking for any way she can to completely and utterly ruin Laurel? I mean, granted, yes, her office would take a big PR hit if they found out what Laurel had done. I mean, what Adam Donner had done, but you don't just blackmail district attorneys and expect them to just roll over on it. Oh, I am going to be so disappointed in this show if that doesn't get addressed later on. But I have a feeling this is just going to be the hand wave that gets Laurel back into her proper legal career. Let's see, what else? One thing I forgot to mention. When Helena is talking with her dad, briefly she says, oh, hey, we're right next to that place where you buried Hugo Mannheim. Well, this might be a little bit of a nod to a character in the comics called Bruno Mannheim, who's a major mobster in the DC universe. Also, we can't forget, they mentioned this two streets named Gail and Simone. This is, of course, a reference to the very talented Gail Simone, writer of the Birds of Prey series for a long time, Secret Six writer, just the current writer on Batgirl. Just all around wonderfully talented writer. Lover. So, yeah, cool stuff there. And anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time around. So, until next time, take care and have a good one. Oh, I almost forgot. I did say that I was live tweeting this episode last night, which I did, and that was quite a bit of fun, but I wasn't quite able to pay as much attention to the episode properly as I would have liked to. I don't really like splitting my attention between the show and trying to tweet at the same time. It just requires a little too much concentration. So me doing that again is kind of a maybe. If you were part of that, let me know what you thought, and I'll think about whether or not I want to do that again. I don't think I'm going to be doing that every week, but maybe every once in a while I'll do that. I also want to say that just for the heck of it, I sort of kept at it and live tweeted my opinions of the 100, which followed Arrow. Now, I haven't made up my mind if I'm going to keep watching the 100. I'm still sort of making up my mind about that. But I gotta say, folks, I really had much more fun live tweeting the 100 than I did Arrow, simply because I was basically just trashing the hell out of the 100. And not that I think that it's a terrible show or anything like that. It's just, it seems like it's just an okay show, and there's just a lot of plot holes going on with the 100 in my book. So I'm not going to be live tweeting Arrow next week, most likely, but I'm really giving serious consideration to live tweeting the 100 just so I can have fun poking fun at it. Judging by the amount of retweets and favorites I got from other people who were watching the show at the same time, apparently I was rather amusing that last night. So yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun with that. Anyway, guys, until next time, take care and had a good one. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Hoosier Jedi. See ya.